Next to me here is the Director of Domestic Policy, Melody Barnes. And I want to thank all of you for joining us at this particular session called Strengthening Workers and Main Street. So I hope you're in the right place. And we're here, as you know, to explore some of the problems facing workers today and, of course, the solutions that will lead to more and better paid jobs for our workers. As our economic recovery continues, we need to reach workers who are facing layoffs with the training needed to enter into new and better paying jobs. A lack of trained workers can hold back employers from hiring even when good jobs are available. This is why our mission today includes working with employers to support programs that produce workers who are prepared to take highly skilled jobs in promising fields. And at the Department of Labor, we have been working tirelessly to come up with new ideas to help workers and employers in the economy. Just today, we're kicking off the Tools for America Job Seekers Challenge that will identify the most effective ways to connect workers with employers online. Look for more information on the Department of Labor website. And of course, now we're looking forward to hearing from you and your innovative ideas. We'll all try to be concise because we don't have a lot of time. And I know many of you here have traveled very far, and we appreciate that. And so what we'll do to kind of kick this off is we'll have a little discussion right now, a presentation by Mr. Andy Van Kleunen, who's here. And he is going to tell us about what he is seeing in the current job training area in terms of opportunities and other measures that will prepare workers. He represents the Workforce Alliance, and he is the executive director. Thanks for coming, Andy, and please.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So I would just ask to just kind of give a broad brush of some of the issues that we've been part of in conversations here in Washington, as well as with folks we work with out in the field. We work with a fair number of business owners, labor unions, community colleges, community-based organizations. Because for us to come up with some solutions that are really going to connect skills to job creation strategies, whether the President has asked us to do that, we need to be looking across all of those different sectors and all of those different institutions. And in some of those conversations, there have been some tensions or some problems I think we're trying to wrestle with. So one of them clearly is we have an imperative to try in a very short amount of time to create jobs and to try to figure out whether or not we can connect skills development to that in some effective way. Sometimes the thought of training workers is seen as a longer-term strategy. And so there's a tension between investing in skills versus creating jobs quickly. And some of the proposals on the table about how to create jobs, whether it's some rapid on-the-job training funded through our Department of Labor, or shared work where folks are being asked to work for slightly less amount of time, but then having a training component, or even using tax incentives to help to encourage employers to hire folks. The question is, does it make sense for us to have a training component connected to each of those types of proposals? What we have often said is we are in a difficult cyclical downturn, but it is sitting on top of a set of structural issues within our labor market that we think are going to require some kind of strategies that are going to take us past the recession. So, we had 80% of employers who said they could not grow their businesses because they were short-skilled workers prior to the recession. We're going to have some of those same problems post-recession, and that is going to slow down our ability to jumpstart the economy and help those businesses to grow. And if we have over half of the folks in our labor market that lack the necessary basic skills to actually benefit from an opportunity to get some kind of technical training and to move into a new industry, then we have a real structural problem with how it is that we are structuring education programs, particularly for folks who are past the high school age. So those are some kind of bigger structural problems I think we need to grapple with, even as we're trying to deal with very short-term solutions on job creation. Another set of challenges is that when you think about things from the traditional education perspective, there are many challenges that we have in reforming our K-12 system, but at least there are some consistencies. Most everybody starts at about the same age. They finish about at the same age. There's a general set of things that we all expect folks to learn, children to learn as they go through K-12. And so we have an education department and a series of programs within the education department. For the workforce training issues, we have a diversity of programs across a whole number of different agencies here at the federal level because we're dealing with a great diversity of workers from the age of 18 to the age of 68. People who have advanced degrees and are looking to get into a new occupation, people who cannot even functionally read effectively, who may have been working in a manufacturing job, but now cannot transition to a new industry. And so how is it that we can take all of the different things that we're doing under the leadership of our departments here, the Department of Labor and the Department of Education, through our Workforce Investment Act programs, through our Trade Act programs on the labor side. What are we doing with our higher education programs, both getting folks Pell Grants to get them into college, as well as basic education programs under the Department of Education. These are all very different programs. How can we align them in some way where it makes it easier for workers to progress along a particular kind of career pathway? And how do we make it easier for employers to interact with that system? And I think this raises some questions about where it is that we're going to be putting some of our emphasis, particularly as we're trying to get folks on some kind of a skill path out of the recovery. A lot of our, traditionally here in Washington, a lot of our focus has been trying to get folks some kind of 4-year degree, getting as many people as possible into college and getting them a university degree. And we want to get everybody on that pathway who can. But there's a challenge that for most of the local labor markets that we talk to, the majority, or at least the plurality of their jobs, are skilled jobs that require some kind of credential past high school, but not necessarily a 4-year degree. So how consistently can we restructure our investments, particularly in the short term, when we want to get folks into skilled jobs as quickly as possible? And how can we get them some kind of industry-recognized credential, count that effectively across all of our different federal programs, and measure our success in collaboration with local industries, developing those credentials across a wide range of firms within particular industries, working with different stakeholders, labor unions, community colleges, community-based organizations, and sector partnerships that can help folks figure out what are the credentials that we need now and down the road, and then working with our various education systems, both the 4-year systems and the community college systems, as well as our training and upgrading funds and other places where we can be training folks to get into those kinds of jobs. So how do we make those traditional education systems restructure in some way to react to the immediate challenges that we're facing? So those seem to be some of the issues that we're facing as we're having these conversations here.
Great. Well, thank you, Andy. And as Hilda said, my name is Melody Barnes. I'm the director of the Domestic Policy Council. And what I'll be doing along with Hilda is really just facilitating what we know will be a really robust conversation, because we have people, many of you here I already know, and the work that you've done, many of you I've read about the work that you're doing, so I think we have a great blend of expertise in the room. And as Andy said, we want to focus on some of those big picture issues and drill down on them a little bit, thinking about places where jobs exist, but we don't necessarily have a labor pool with the skills. How do we address that issue? Both the problem of getting people trained very quickly to get those skills, but also where do we invest and how do we invest over the longer term, and thinking about places where we don't have people who are not college educated and we are trying to match their skills base with the kinds of jobs available, and also thinking about specific populations that we know are in specific trouble, particularly right now. We've all been either reading about it, experiencing it because of those that you're working with, or hearing about it, and how do we address those specific needs right now? So drilling down on some of those issues a little bit more. We don't have table tents, so we're going to have to do everything that my parents taught me not to do, which if we don't know your name, kind of say, yes, you, please. But so forgive that. But again, we just want to go ahead and get started. We have about an hour to have a conversation and go through those issues. Just to get things started and thinking about that first question about having jobs, but not necessarily having a labor pool with the skills to meet those jobs. I think Andy did a great job of laying some of those issues out, but also thought it would be interesting to hear, maybe Penny, from you, and thinking about how employers and how the business sector thinks about that particular issue and thinks about that problem. I know you've also been working with the president on his Economic Recovery Advisory Board. So just to jumpstart the conversation, wonder if you had any thoughts you might want to add.
One of the things that I've been focused on in the Economic Recovery Board, as you know, Melody, and Secretary Solis, is on the issue of training and workforce readiness. And we all know how hard this recession has hit our least skilled and least educated workers, and so that's a terrible problem. So one of the things that we are doing in our Economic Recovery Board is we have a series of meetings set up over the next 5 weeks about 8 different meetings with administration, labor, the private sector, different groups, technology, services, small business, utilities and energy, manufacturing, financial services, construction. So administration, labor, private sector, and foundations in the same meetings to really discuss. The purpose is to get perspective from industry leaders and their workforce partners on how to maximize the impact of federal investments that we have, money we already have appropriated, how do we maximize to get the most effective and quickest impact. With legislation coming up, 2010, both for the American Graduation Initiative as well as the Workforce Investment Act. And so we want to make sure that those are effective pieces of legislation, the reauthorization of WIA as well. So it's a critical time, and so following the Job Summit, we'll do this deeper exploration into workforce development issues, focusing not just on the legislation, but how the public and private sector can work together on skills development for future jobs. And then on the third is how to build support for those efforts.
And others, again, well, great, thank you. And if, please don't forget to give us your name and your organization or company for the purposes of the transcript.
Thanks, Melody. Jamie Marasotis with Lumina Foundation. So here's a shovel-ready idea linked to education and training that I've been thinking about. 2 premises. The first one is that the vast majority of jobs that exist or that are being created require some form of post-secondary education, some form of education beyond high school. So it's not just a priority, it's also a prerequisite for those jobs. The second is that the biggest challenge for many people who are out of work or looking for higher quality work is time. Time becomes a serious variable in the equation because of opportunity costs, because they're desperate to find a good job to do well. So if we create accelerated programs in, say, community colleges or other types of institutions, highly accelerated programs where you essentially treat the education like a job. It's a 9-to-5 job. You are in a program that is highly workforce relevant. We're actually piloting this right now in Indiana with Ivy Tech Community College through a grant that we've made to the community college, where you only pick programs where there is clear workforce relevance coming out of the program. You provide the individuals with a living stipend so that they don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs as they're trying to struggle their way through a program, and they immediately get into the workforce quickly with credentials and skills that can make them ready for the workforce very quickly. That kind of a program you could do. My back of the envelope calculation is you provide a stipend of $12,000. The program that we're doing in Indiana is 9 months for an associate degree, so it's highly accelerated. $12,000 plus some costs for the community colleges to do counseling and support and some other things. For $15,000 a head, you could do this. So for $1.5 billion, you get 100,000 people through that kind of program. And our colleague from Community College of Rhode Island down here could tell us whether or not that's feasible for them to be able to do. But my sense is that you could get a lot of people out of unemployment very quickly and very quickly trained for jobs in a way that I think would have a big impact on the unemployment rate, as well as on what we really need, which is individuals to have long-term potential, not low skills, low wage jobs, but the ability to have high-quality jobs.
I would just like to add, many of you here are probably aware that the President's initiative in use of the community college system through UI, the possibility of using UI benefits and coupled with the Pell Grant to allow for people to draw down that UI check, but also then attend and enroll at a community college. And I don't think enough states, in what I'm hearing, are taking advantage of that. And some have to make some adjustments in their legislature. They have to come and reform their packages there so that they can be applicable to their states. I don't see that happening enough, and I'm wondering if any of you are experiencing any of that, because my job would be then to try to reach out to some of these folks that we need to talk to, because apparently there's a lot of people that are not taking advantage of this program that could be very essential. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that.
I'm a community college, not a graduate, but I attended community college, and I started my own business.
Your name, state your name.
Primera Plastics. I'm the founder, president, and CEO of Primera Plastics. I attended night school. I was working for a manufacturer. I was on the line, couldn't handle doing that too much, so I started taking night classes at the community college, local community college in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Shortly after, I started training the technology technicians at the factory that I used to work at. Then I started my own company. But one of the things that in the training that I was receiving from the community colleges was I didn't receive that financial intelligence that would have benefited my employer at the time and myself as I branched out. So then I had to go and seek that out. And I've been in business for 15 years, but that should have been something I feel that even as you bring in skilled, I have multi-million-dollar robots. And I'm not about to let somebody with a GED play with this stuff because the damages they could create, right? But in that same sense, as I'm trying to talk to the employees, is to have them understand that we sell time and the efficiencies that are involved and the impact that there's 140 of us, right, that work at this factory. And they don't get it. They don't understand it. You don't want to sit there and share all your balance sheets and all your, but something that'll click that my job, it's not, what am I contributing? It's not just an 8 to 5 and I'm gone, paycheck. There's more to it than that. If we're going to compete globally, there has to be a sense of unity between all of us, between the employer, the employee, that we're in it together. But that's one thing that, as we were talking about community colleges, when I attended for 3 years, that was that one piece that I wish I would have had back then that would have helped me.
So thinking about the curriculum and additional skill sets that
That would
it's
help the
important
employer.
to the community
Yeah, not
college
just-
experience, right? Which is definitely something that I know we've been thinking about.
Efficient, create more jobs,
Right.
less scrap waste.
Great. I think I saw Donna.
Thank you. Donna Klein, President of Corporate Voices for Working Families. I just want to follow up on Andy's great overview and Penny's comments. In terms of what is on the table right now and possibilities that will incent, we are very heavily involved in the workforce readiness skills development place. We're a 50-company coalition working pretty much on work family issues writ large, but a good 50% of them are, 50% of our funding is in the workforce readiness space. And so we're heavily involved in not only the research side within our businesses, but also the policy discussion here on Capitol Hill. And we would make 2 recommendations. One is to follow up on what Penny talked about in the American Graduation Initiative. We know that working with community colleges, a lot of research that supports the most effective programs are those that partner with businesses. We need to continue to incent businesses to get engaged with community colleges. The apprenticeships, the summer jobs, the mentoring they provide, the students are much more successful and the businesses incent them to graduate, to complete those programs. So we really need to incent them and in any way we can. But I think through the American Graduation Initiative, I think there's probably a way to incent community colleges who partner with businesses to a greater degree than those who do not, and so it would be an incentive for them to partner. The second thing, in terms of the WIA, Workforce Investment Act, I don't know where the discussion is right now on the Innovations Fund, but we really ought to be looking at that to scale up things that we know work, the models that work. Europe is one that comes to mind that we work a lot with. And those are 2, policy things that I think would be hopefully fairly easy to implement that would really not only address the skills gap, the talent development pipeline, but also then in the end create some new jobs and new job opportunities. And we agree certainly that the focus is on jobs that have sustainability, can provide for economic stability for our working families.
I think Randy. Yeah, Randy?
So,
Mention your name.
so there's, I'm sorry, Randy Weingarten, President of the American Federation of Teachers. So, I mean, there's, and Kenny and I were talking about this on the walk upstairs. There's, there's a lot of things that are out there. There's a lot of alignment issues in terms of, and Andy said this, that, you can actually create some good alignment in terms of K-12. We've got a lot of other things that we have to do, but this is in the post-K-12 world. You also see a skills gap. A lot some thought has to be given to alignment and accountability, because you've got lots of different things going on in different places, and probably there are a bunch of things that would surprise people that are going on, but they'll never have access to it because we don't know how to give them access to it. So there's a few ideas I want to just throw out that may give access to this. So first, I do actually, and I'm not here on behalf of the administration, but I do want to give the administration major props, because the ARRA was actually essential to maintaining the lifeline in school. Without the ARRA, and I think Americans get this, that 90 billion that went directly to school systems, that basically either saved or created teacher jobs, it has saved over 300,000 teacher jobs. And in the absence of that, our K-12 system would have cratered. And so continuing something like that, which was targeted spending that actually allow us to create a platform for more reform, is very important. Plus, Americans saw the targeted spending. Building on that, there is an idea that Arnie actually tried in Chicago, that you see popping up in different places. We actually, the AFT gave an innovation fund to West Philadelphia to try to do this as well, which is this notion of community schooling, which is basically co-locating a bunch of services in a school or in a school community. Now, Jeff Canada does it with a neighborhood, and I love Jeff, but a neighborhood may be too diffused and you may not be able to create the accountability. If you do it with a web of schools, like in an urban environment where you have 2 or 3 elementary schools, a junior high school, a high school, you can maybe have a catchment center that gets a lot of community folk. In a rural area, there's 1 high school, or there's 1 junior high school. So if you think about taking, if you have, say, some jobs that you know are available in the community, and you have some job development work that needs to happen, if you co-locate that job development work in the evenings or the weekends in a school, so that parents know what is going on, they go to the school, it's the school that their kids go through. We actually hire people to do maybe some of the childcare, which is another way of creating some jobs as well over the weekends, so that parents can get that training. You can even do some of this accelerated training that you were talking about, because you bring in the community college to do it there. But it's a matter of thinking about where to locate the program, who does it, who partners, and create those efficiencies and create some accountability, because the government is already dealing with the school. And so we've talked about co-locating a lot of community services, even for direct job creation in a school, like nutrition, academic, social supports for at-risk kids. And you can, and Andy and I talked about how you create some jobs that way. Like, for example, we believe you could run a program like this for $1.9 million. You could hire a new administrative social worker, a new dental hygienist, some folks who are lower skilled. You can do some of that stuff too in terms of direct job creation that creates direct services. But more importantly, you can start thinking through who does the skills development, do it in a web of schools, or do it in a school in a rural community, and you can then create these partnerships and some accountability around it. It's done in actually Great Britain, of all places. There's a workplace learning program that they started several years ago. I'm actually going to London on Monday to see some of these programs. We did a couple of pilots. It's working in Baltimore to do some of this. But this is a good model to try to move things quickly.
No, that's very helpful.
Hi.
Yes.
I'm Rod Rodri. I'm running Time-Wise Management Systems. We basically are a small company working with a lot of nonprofits to put people to work. I'm more comfortable on the manufacturing floor, so I apologize ahead of time if I don't do this right. But I'm very excited, particularly with what the Secretary said. 3 years ago, Secretary Chow gave us a program because we had gone to about 2,000 manufacturers, and everybody wanted to hire somebody, but they wouldn't hire them. And we couldn't get our arms around why not. There's great people coming out of tech schools. These are the entry-level jobs. And I will tell you today that they are out there in the thousands to be had right now. there's a small skills gap, and I mean small in time, 3 weeks. I'm convinced I can put 25,000 people to work in the next, 12 months easily with such and such, but I'll tell you about this program. What we found, which was so incredible to me as a guy who spent 25 years in manufacturing, is that these are $10, $12, $14, $16 an hour jobs, and they're jobs that carry benefits. But then when they take them out and they bring them in, now these people cannot go to school. That's the problem. They can't go to a tech school.
have time.
They don't have a high school degree. They got a criminal record. They're a mother, okay, there's a guy says to me, I got 3 babies at home, I'm driving 2 taxi cabs, and I gotta feed them. I can't go to school. I need a job now. I can give you 2 weeks, and that's what we did. Gave him a job, he's a supervisor now. But in any case, what I wanted to say to you, the thing that was incredible to me, that 3 years ago, Secretary Chow funded us, we put 300 people to work, and we did it in 8 months. And these were entry-level jobs, 17 years old to 70. A lot of single moms, the hard-to-serve population that you mentioned today. So we had a great result, Secretary of Labor, the report and so forth, but we never got any more funding for it. So we got some funding that started through the Secretary this year. We had it in Florida, it started 2 months ago. Today I have 19 people on the van being trained for funding, and they will be going to work next week with a guaranteed job. We do something that's very different. We get the job in advance. We go to them, we go to the manufacturer and say, this is what I'm going to give you. I'm going to take this guy through basic skills, I'm going to take him through this, I'm going to teach him lean training, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put him on 2 machines, and I'm going to have him assemble exactly what you assemble. And I do that for them. We do that 4 weeks ahead of time, put them on the van for 2 weeks. We follow up with 4 weeks. Our placement rate is holding at 92%, and the ones that go in from other organizations fail at 94%. And the cost, this is the thing, the cost is $6,900 a person. Now, that is a return on the government's investment in 4.5 months. And if they're on welfare or TANF programs and things, the money comes back in less than 4 months. That program it can be expanded greatly. We're putting a proposal in front of the Secretary for it. But here's a proven program when you're talking about something right now. We're talking weeks here, we're talking hours, and we're talking about jobs that exist today. And every manufacturer I talked to said, I'm putting some overtime because I don't want to take these people in. And the reason for that is he hires 100 people, and 98% of them he has to get rid of, and he can't do the brain damage anymore. This is getting down into the trenches now. And these guys are committed, and the type of people that we're getting in Bethel, Maine, at 6 o'clock in the morning with a 60-mile-an-hour cold wind, they're standing an hour ahead of time to get into our vehicles. And these are mobile vehicles that go around the country. These people want their jobs. They're terrific people. If I was to build a company again, I would build it with these people.
How are you matching the skills?
I'm sorry?
Job needs with people? How are you doing the matching?
Well, actually, most of these jobs are entry-level manufacturing jobs. We go into the manufacturer. It could be, a lot of them are CNC operations, believe it or not, today. In the old days, you needed a CNC programmer. Now, you really need to push the buttons in the right sequence. We also do assembly work. Piper's mostly going to be assembly work. So we go right into the plant first. What are they going to be assembling? We pull it right back into the machines and do it. But what we try to do is we give them basic math skills real quickly. We test for drugs. We test for manual dexterity. We make sure they show up on time and do all that. We do a lot of screening for them. What we're really filling is a gap for the small manufacturer. He doesn't have time to train these people that come in off the street. He has no program. He's making the widgets. Well, what we're doing is taking him, screening him, giving him some, filling that skill gap quickly. Thousands of people work right now today because the jobs are waiting. So this program's a proven program, not. And I would invite the secretary to come down and get one of these things. And when she goes to one of these graduations, after 2 weeks, she'll be amazed. But we do go right in and we still match with whatever the company wants. And in all fairness to the tech schools and community colleges, you cannot go to Presque Isle, Maine, where there are 9 machine shops and a great technical school, and train what those 9 machine shops want in 2 weeks, because they got their own programs. And what they're looking for, and it took us years to find out, what they're really looking for is that specific skill that can be fitted into that employee quickly to get them. And by the way, this is a career ladder.
Well, can I add some, just to lend validity to what you're saying, and I think there were big ideas.
He needs to introduce himself.
Probably borders on one of the big ideas. I'm Randall Stevenson, I'm AT&T.
Okay, good.
And we reached an agreement with our labor union a couple of years ago to put in place a certain wage and benefit level that would let us bring some jobs that had been exported to India back. And I committed 5,000 jobs that we'd bring back from India, put them in the United States. And you put these in little technical centers of about 300 to 500 people generally. And so we start bringing these back. Now keep in mind, when we send them to India, it takes about 4 months to fill 5,000 jobs. 2 years later, I'm filling the last of the jobs here for the reasons you articulated. And we've done a lot of creative things to try to match the skill sets with the workforce in the areas where we're going. One gets to your idea. We went to San Antonio. We committed to the mayor of San Antonio that would put one of these centers there so that the workforce that was ready to go to work wasn't qualified. These are high school graduate type jobs. So we worked with the San Antonio Community College, and we told them, here are the remedial skills we need for these 300 people. The city is paying for the remedial training in the community college. I think it's a 3-week training effort that they're doing. And we're putting them on the payroll while they're in there, and 3 weeks later, boom, we bring them back and put them to work. But it's a marriage of what the two of you were saying, and there is a huge population ready to go to work. There's a huge group of people that would like to have folks on the payroll today with the skill set match. It's not any good.
That's interesting.
I would think too that instead of the old paradigm was to talk about learning and then earning, but these have to be concurrent activities now. I mean, if you look at the demographics of the workforce, we have to figure out how people can continue to learn new job skills while they're earning a living on a full-time basis. And a lot of that has to do with, as you both know, as we all know, in terms of the structure of the workplace, flexibility, how we can deploy our workforces in a more flexible way.
Right. I mean, we're talking about is meeting people where they live and the reality of
Absolutely.
people's lives. And I know, which is great, we have several hands. I'm going to go to Rob, and then I know a hand here.
And then over here, too.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Wish we had 10 cards.
Just raise your
That's
hand.
what you want. Okay. You got me on the look.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna try a lot of things together. I think I heard my colleague speak about, I thought I heard the word work first come out at that end of the table, and more alignment, and I don't know if there's anybody here from HHS at the table. What my colleague here just, describes is something that's very regional. Not all the regions have those kind of manufacturing jobs. And I'm certainly in line with you on the 3 to 4 week attitudinal training, getting in there and all that. What we have found is that, and this is work that we've done in conjunction with Andy's shop, the skill development piece. Through community college or through CEOs, one of the things I will commend the administration for is that big gunk of money that they've committed to community college. All due respect to the community colleges, though, and I'm a product of one, there's nothing in that legislation with teeth that mandates them to engage nonprofits who have a closer hand and a closer angle and pulse on the community. There are some community colleges, particularly New York Bronx Community College being one of them, that happens to be open to that kind of collaboration. The other thing, I also heard mentioned, higher education. I think it's kind of hard for Americans to wrap their heads around the notion that only 30% of Americans go to college. That means the overwhelming bulk of people are out there making decent bucks, all right, but then they are not prone to go to four-year institution. They may go to community college, they may go to community college for particular training specific to an industry. But we have to somehow accept that that's where the rubber's going to hit the road for most of the people that we're talking about. I mean, lastly, when we talk about alignment, we talk about the biggest workforce money is in tennis, right? And they're still operating on a different philosophical approach that is not only inconsistent with where we want to go, but may denigrate the fact where we want to go. In New York City, I can tell you that the notion, and it would be publicly said, that they will say that a bad job today is better than training for a good job tomorrow, which quite frankly is stupid and kind of nuts. And so what I would urge the administration to do, if it's going to put out bucks of money to localities, it has to look at the philosophical approach at the local level, because that's where the money ends up. We have actually had static between the state and a locality philosophically, right?
Yeah,
So that the feds need to hold on to more of a set aside to give nonprofits the wherewithal and avenues to go directly to the federal government, because then you will get the consistency that you desire. Once it passes from the state to the city, you know, there's no way to control how that money is going to be deployed. And then the last thing that I would end on, because I know the last thing to say is, again, the legislation has to have some kind of requirement that mandates, and I use the word very strongly, community colleges to engage the CBO.
Yeah.
Because community colleges don't want the kind of guys and gals I'm working with on their campus. You know, they just do not want them. And these are people that are hungry.
They're
I
hard
mean,
to
every
place.
day I live and breathe the fact that, you know, and I live out the lives of people in our communities don't want to work, don't wrap their way, don't wrap around blocks for 10 to 15 jobs. They really want to work. And community colleges have to be, in some respects, forced to engage with the CBO community. Some colleges.
You bring up a very good point. In fact, we're going to be issuing another $100 million in about 2 weeks for the purpose of collaborative partnerships, CBOs, community colleges, apprenticeship programs. We want folks that haven't been involved before at any time. So we are really casting the net out there. And I asked my ETA assistant secretary to actually write this language into our guidelines. And that's what I think has to happen with some of the other cabinet members and the funding that they provide, because we're not the only group in town that gives out training dollars. It's also Department of Energy. We're also looking at Department of Education, HHS. But I don't think that discussion has really taken hold solidly. So when we do have our debate on WIA, I would very much like to hear from those of you who are concerned on this issue and could articulate that to our offices and work with us, because this is going to be, as you know, a major battle to kind of redirect how we really partner with those communities that have been left behind, and that is a big priority of this administration. So we need your help.
Okay. Do that when you have that competition. Bring me back.
And I know we have hand here, here, and there, and here, and we'll do that. I just want to, though, toss in one more idea for consideration, conversation. As we're thinking about what the federal government can do, and I think Randy touched on this a bit, on that $90 billion that saved teacher jobs, police officer, firefighter, et cetera, what should we be doing to think about the kind of training people need for the jobs that states and localities are able to produce? So I just put that on the table for consideration. We'll start here.
Randy Johnson with Workforce Development Incorporated and Workforce Investment Board of Minnesota. I want to echo what's being talked about here. Make sure you understand it's not really an either-or situation. We have a large chunk of folks who have come through the door recently as dislocated workers who were fully appropriate for and had the affinity for college. We put them there. We spent all the money. We need more. But with that said, there is still, and has been said around the table, a good chunk of people that either aren't ready for college or the job that they're going to really doesn't require that kind of level of training. What I think we're describing here then is important, and it's something that we've demonstrated here with what we call an academy. We have other issues here where we need to make sure we maximize the kind of expenditures that are currently out there. We have folks coming in with serious adult basic education needs. There's another funding stream for that. There's the college itself, which I don't think is very productive to use your Pell Grants to get the basic skills, et cetera. And really, where we're headed with this, though, our jobs, we want all people to participate because we do have a labor-short environment that we're actually in here. It's being masked with this recession, but very shortly, we're going to be back in the nickel. So how do we get people ready for a job, but also jobs that are going to succeed in the future? We need to do outreach and bring them into these short-term academies. We operate them for 3 to 4 weeks, healthcare, long-term care academies. We've had them for manufacturing, basic manufacturing, now energy academies. It's not hard to get people to come in to show interest, give them the understanding of the ethics and the issues involved, the terminology necessary, whether it's lean or et cetera. Give them the assessment, the aptitude kinds of testing. And at the end, we bring, during that process, we bring in other partners. So we can have adult basic ed work on the math, for example, in a STEM proposition. The M for math, adult basic ed, take it from here. The community college system work on the technology and the engineering kinds of things. We can be the outreach and the placement vehicle. That brings me to the next question. When you get done with this, you're either going to need to go on for further education, because now you're appropriate for it. We've been able to track that the dropout rate for somebody going to training, having gone through these pre-vocational academies, goes down to 10% or less. People in the colleges themselves admit to in excess of 50% dropout rate for people without difficulties. So it's very important to get this right, so you maximize your return on investment. So, but when we get done with that, they either go to school or they're going to need to go to work. And work is the dearth right now. And so can we hire the employer to be the continued instructor, basically the on-the-job training situation that we're back to? There is talk of straight wage subsidies. We've operated programs like that in the past for in Minnesota. You may have to reconsider public if it's bad enough in certain areas. You have a vehicle, however, right now, the on-the-job training program through the existing structure. I think if we had a set of waivers that would allow for a greater percentage of reimbursement in the short run, moving up to 90%, 70% reimbursement, that kind of thing, I think it could make a great deal of difference in some of these folks. I think, but behind that becomes one last waiver here that needs to be understood. I've had discussion earlier today, we get into capital and economic development and so on as though it is separate from workforce development. They're really doing the together. And so regional planning and regional development discussions need to continue. Got to make sure workforce is at the table and helping leading that and offering that guide through that process.
Great. Hey, Burl?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Burl Ellis. I'm the county executive from DeKalb County, Georgia, in the Atlanta area. I'm an elected official, so I have a slightly different perspective, though it touches on much of what has already been raised today. I think that I want to first of all say that the stimulus has made a difference to local governments, and I appreciate the administration's recognition that it's metropolitan communities, not just cities, but cities and surrounding suburban areas that are that drive the economy to a large extent. Probably hasn't been enough getting down to the local level. At the end of the day, most local governments are funded by property taxes. And with the real estate market being depressed, that puts great pressure on all of us. And so we're faced with making some very difficult decisions, downsizing, privatizing, reductions in services. I talked to other county and city officials around the country, and everybody has some really unpleasant choices that they have to make. I've got to introduce a budget in 12 days to my council, and it's the options don't all look good. The silver lining, I think, though, is that we have had some opportunities. We've had some developers who've come to us and they've looked to us for incentives to either complete real estate projects, and usually mixed-use projects that we think are good for economic growth and produce jobs. But they've looked to us to provide incentives because of the difficult marketplace in which they've operated, and we've struggled with that. Whether you give additional property tax incentives in order to stimulate the kind of jobs and growth and hopeful return at the end. And I think we need some guidance on what kind of incentives we could be offering and what kind of incentives the federal government can help us provide to people who really want to get in there and finish some of these private sector projects. The other thing that I'm aware that you're doing, and I'm also very encouraged by, is this Sustainable Communities Initiative, where you're particularly targeting brownfields to turn them into green fields and then ultimately into sustainable communities, mixed-use, transit-oriented development. And that, to a large degree, means plants, closed plants, automobile dealerships that have closed down. We've got a 165-acre closed GM plant in our county, right at major intersections, and our MARTA transportation system runs right there at the site. But no private investor will put up the 60, 70, $80 million, which whatever it is, that General Motors seems to want in order to make that project happen. Now, the interesting thing is, a year ago, they put out an RFP, and they were about to select somebody, and they were looking at maybe 80, 90 million. At that time, the price has fallen. It seems to be that somewhere around 50 million is 50 to 60 million is the price that people think it's worth, but GM wants more. And because they've got that federal money, they seem to be able to hold on. So, and I've heard this not just in my community, but I've heard it in a lot of other communities. 4,000 jobs lost, and this is the connecting point here. 4,000 jobs lost at that site. We're working with the private sector, public-private partnerships. We've been in negotiation because we decided at some point that the local government had to play a role. So we partnered with the city of Doraville, DeKalb County. We've entertained offers from a number of private developers, and everybody is ready to go and do their part. But GM is sitting on the site because they're not quite getting what they would like to get for it, and it just doesn't make sense. We've got so much rain in Georgia this year that no one really knows the extent of the pollution that's surrounding to adjacent neighborhoods as a result of that brownfield continuing to exist. So we need the incentives, but we also need the stick that only the federal government can provide. And this is not just a problem that's unique to DeKalb County. We think it's a problem. I know it's a problem because I've talked to my counterparts in other cities and counties across the country that they're facing too. We need some help to move those kind of projects along so that we can clean up those sites and then we can promote sustainable development and get people hired.
Okay. Yep, Sal?
We're at the August ordinance. We were first to see the kind of the way we do. And what we've been trying to do is reinvent.
They can't hear you. Can you speak up a little bit?
What we've been trying to do is reinvent Monster at the same time our business has been going down. Over the past 2.5 years, we've invested about $500 million in new technology, right, to give tools for people to connect with jobs, find out what they need to do in order to qualify for jobs, educate them on, moving their careers or their lives forward. The problem that we have now, we have a long-term and a short-term issue. The short-term issue is we have a huge unemployment problem. It's not 10.2%. We know that statistic only includes people over 25 years of age. There's a lot of kids out there that have graduated schools. I'm on the board of trustees of Long Island University. It's the 9th biggest university in the United States. It has about 30,000 students. The graduating class, June class, only 20% of those students have found jobs. It's not a question just of we need to educate them. No question about that. And that university really services about 50% of the student body is black, 25% or so is Latino, and 25% is mixed. It's in the heart of New York, it's in Brooklyn. And the jobs just aren't there. What we need to do in the short run, and I consider the short run medium, long term is maybe a year. Okay? In the short run, is get these people employed. You need capital for small businesses. Front page of the Journal today said that B of A was paying back $18 billion, or raising $18 billion of equity. That's not good news. As a taxpayer, sure, do I want the $18 billion back? Of course I do. But the real issue is that $18 billion has got to be pushed to small business. When I look at my business, we segmentize who we serve between small business, medium, and large. My business is down 65% in the small business area. That means the small business is hiring a heck of a lot less than it used to, and they make up about 55, 60% of the workforce. We need the guy that wants to open up a muffler shop to be able to get the money to open up a muffler shop. The banks, the big banks, particularly, but they're just not lending. And there's a whole multitude of issues that would take many hours to go through that. They're complex issues. But they're not doing it. CIT, which was a huge lender, is gone. Okay. Goldman Sachs, what was it, last month, announced that they were going into small business and opened up for about a day or two when they announced and actually opened it up. Their telephone system got so overloaded, they had to shut down. That's Goldman Sachs. They have a little bit of technology. Okay? That signifies the depth of the issue. So we have to get people employed. You know, that's an immediate. The issue of education is a huge issue. I have a daughter that teaches in New York, is a kindergarten teacher in New York City. Okay? She teaches in a community that's predominantly Latino, immigrants from Latin America. Okay? About 20 of the 26 children in her class don't speak English when they come to kindergarten. Right? In the summer, we can't even afford, there was a jeopardy in New York before the stimulus. How many teachers were we laid off? Well, we're talking about those children are taught English in that kindergarten class. But over the summer, their parents, who are both working, are expected to keep them fluent in English. They don't speak English well themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you are really doing a great job of kind of bringing together, talking about all the issues that are certainly plaguing the economy, affecting the ability to create jobs, you know, the conversation we're having here about training, the lending that's necessary to, you know, support the small businesses that you're talking about, and what we're trying to spur and to generate there. I mean, I think you've done a great job of really touching on all of those issues, including the one I think Randy touched on in terms of school teachers and the kinds of jobs that we're trying to create on the state and local level as well.
Not to interrupt you, but think about the insanity of the conversation of laying off teachers to meet budget, given the discussion in this room about education.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
which is
right.
part of the reason we,
Did
you
the
know,
Recovery
put that
Act.
state fiscal stabilization money in place so early and pushed out, because we could see the fact that localities had shortfalls and they weren't going to be able to fill those shortfalls without that money. And then trying to build on that with accountability and reforms that we've been talking about. And also, Bob, I think you maybe wanted to touch on a little bit of that issue as well.
Well, it was Bob Greenstein, Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. It's precisely this issue. There have been a number of interesting and important ideas put forth in the last 45 minutes. But I think, given the scope of the unemployment problem in the economy, most of them either would have limited effect at best or would fail unless we do more with regard to the state and local fiscal crisis, which has turned into the worst crisis of its sort since the Depression. I mean, we've been talking about community colleges, job training programs. The gentleman from AT&T, in your example, the city of San Antonio paid for a certain training program. Where we're headed is very disturbing. The combined budget deficits, just at the state level, for this fiscal year and next, starting in most states last July 1st and the next one next July 1st, are about $350 billion, or to look at it another way, the budget deficit states faced this year before the federal relief funds totaled 26% of state operating budgets. That would be the equivalent of the federal government having a $7 to $8 trillion deficit, all of which it had to close because it was constitutionally required to do so in the middle of a downturn. Now, states have used the very important fiscal relief money in ARRA, and they've drawn down rainy day funds and reserves, which states had prior to the recession, built to the highest level in history. But we're now at a point where the reserves are basically gone. The one-time maneuvers they can do are largely gone. And the federal relief money basically runs out by December 2010. The Medicaid part runs out entirely. Given the plan states have filed with the Department of Education, it looks like nearly all of the stabilization money will be expended by then. But when states start their next fiscal year on July 1st, 2010, they don't budget for 2 6-month periods. So they're looking at this $180 billion hole for the year as a whole. They no longer have the low-hanging fruit of pulling down rainy day funds. And the magnitude of the budget cuts and tax increases we're looking at are of deep concern. In using the rules of thumb that the President's Council of Economic Advisors has put forth, we estimate that in the absence of further relief, we're talking about actions at the state level that could take as much as 0.9 of a percentage point off of the gross domestic product, or stated another way, 900,000 jobs, 900,000 more job losses. So if we're talking about jobs for teachers, for police and fire, for the teachers in community colleges and the like, we're going to go backward, not forward, even if we took every good idea around the table, if the federal government doesn't do more. And it's private sector jobs as well. I mean, if you take the Medicaid program, nearly every state in the country runs its Medicaid program by contracting with a private managed care company. And just let me wrap up on this. We already have 2 states that have announced or are about to announce that on January 2011, if there isn't more aid, in one state they'll throw 80,000 people off of Medicaid into the ranks of the uninsured, in the other state 100,000. Other states won't do that, but if they don't do that, where are they going to get the money? They're going to cut education, and they're going to, the crisis that was averted is going to come back. So I know the politics on this are not the easiest, but I do think it's kind of, Randy, you kind of said these other things were built on a platform. And the platform going forward, unfortunately, we really do need more federal fiscal relief for a somewhat further period. Instead of going off a cliff at the end of 2010, we need to gradually come down as the economy recovers, or we really run the risk of what happens at the state and local level, undercutting all the good things you're doing in the Recovery Act and increasing the risk even of a double-dip recession.
So this is what I mapped out as a game plan, because we have about 15, maybe 20 minutes left. Thus far, I have, and I'm sorry,
Barry Rand.
Barry, Bruce, I have you here, I have Ashley, Ray, Joe Hansen, Ken, Ted, Secretary Reich, and
Matthew Siegel.
Matthew, sorry, I apologize for that. So if we could kind of go through, you know, with our focus on job training, and just conscious of the fact that we want to try and get everyone in before we have to wrap up. I knew this would be a robust conversation, but that's a good thing. So you go.
Well, you may say that you prefer that I give this the floor to someone else, but it's preparing workers and strengthening Main Street. So I wanted to talk about strengthening Main Street.
Great.
So strengthening Main Street, a couple of issues. One is that older workers, 50 plus, I'm from AARP. So 50 plus workers, the issue with unemployment is probably twice the rate that you see. The issue of preparedness is less than what we're talking about. So I'm going to talk about jobs and the fact that we have some ready-made people for jobs and a number of people who are prepared for jobs regardless of the age piece of it. But years ago, we had a philosophy in business that you could go overseas and you could pick up jobs, you could ship service-oriented jobs overseas, and you could save money, and the P&L of major corporations would improve. Since then, if you look at the wages in India, the wages in China, and the wages period overseas, they have gone up substantially. They have more than doubled and tripled in many areas. And so the question is, all these service jobs, call centers, would we consider giving an incentive for businesses, major corporations, to bring back service jobs? The original concept was that we would ship low-paying jobs and we would keep the intellectual jobs, the high-value jobs. And I know because I was in that particular business. So the question is, now that the gap has closed tremendously and we need jobs now, and you would end up creating jobs, which would end up giving more income tax, which would end up getting more federal funding. Can we incent businesses to bring these jobs back? We have plenty of open spaces and buildings. We have plenty of states that when they ship them over there that they were almost equal in wages anyway. So that's a tax incentive to bring jobs back. We have thousands of jobs over there. That's one point. The second point is the stimulus package. We talk about what has happened with the states and local, but we still have billions of dollars hung up that have not trickled down to local. And the conversation we had with Larry Summers this morning at breakfast was basically around the fact that if you think in terms of scale, then you think how to get all this money out, which means that you're basically focused on macro methods of getting money out. The question, though, is that when you think of macro methods, you miss Main Street, and you miss all the conversations about Main Street. And somehow, are there other ways to focus not only in scale, but in micro strategies that get to Main Street so that people can borrow money at community banks and local banks? Because many of the people who have skills and are waiting, if you go through these small towns, all you see is businesses closing. And you see jobs that are there, so if you can stimulate what's already there, you automatically have jobs that can propel themselves in a shorter period of time than if you're trying to train, I'm not saying I'm going to do it, train for technology jobs coming in the future. Last point is that there are some areas where there are jobs waiting and we don't have the training. Nursing, as an example. Now, I'm also associated with a university that has nursing. What's the problem with nursing and other health care? The issue is you can't find faculty to do the training for nursing. Right. And so throughout this country, we have nursing opportunities, healthcare opportunities, no facility to get them trained because we don't have faculty. What can we do to discover industries like nursing and other areas where the training is inhibited because we don't have the right professionals to be able to move over in theoretically lower paying jobs to do it? What can you do to incent that? Those are three ideas.
Great, thank you.
I'm Bruce Reed from the Democratic Leadership Council. One of the most compelling ways to avert the crisis that Bob talked about and deal with the crisis that we've been talking about is to rescue the state's community college systems. We are crazy to be letting states turn people away from community college. Those people like Randy who have been fighting for years about dropout problems at the high school level and the college level, we're now seeing a lockout problem where this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get people to be to take all comers. And for relatively little money, we could give states the resources and help them build the capacity to take all comers for community college. It would be a wonderful way for them to free up money for some of their other fiscal problems. It's the best possible way to help middle-class families save money on college, because a lot of families are going to want to go to two-year colleges as a stepping stone to four-year colleges. And if we want to give it a jobs component, we could also dramatically expand work-study, which is one of the cheapest, most effective ways to help provide college aid. It doesn't happen much at the community college level. The federal program doesn't do much there because most of the people traditionally who go into community college were already working. But we could, for a couple $1,000s a slot, create an awful lot of work for a lot of people of all ages who are trying to better themselves.
Great. Thank you. Good. Yes.
My name is Luis Cortez. I'm with Esperanza out of Philadelphia. We run a public charter school, which is a high school. We have a junior college, and we have a one-stop shop, which is the only Latino. They call Career Links in Pennsylvania. I don't know why we have a different name for them, but it's a one-stop shop. My concern is that we have all these silos, and when it comes to training, we have a huge, in the Latino community, we have a lot of high school graduates who are reading at 6th grade. And when we try to place them in a lot of our businesses in North Philadelphia, the businesses can't take them. But because they're a high school graduate, they would have been better off dropping out of school. Because had they dropped out of school, they could now, as an adult, get into a GED program, now that they know education is important. But what has happened is now that they know education is important, but because they got a degree, they can't compete in a junior college or in a community college. So they're lost, and they're a huge chunk of people in this country, which are the illiterate people with degrees. I don't know what to call them, I want to create a nice name for it, because we can't seem to get, I can't get them into my junior college. They don't qualify. I want to help. I'm concerned that we keep saying community colleges are a panacea. We're seeing them as a panacea for employment. The Community College of Philadelphia, which I greatly love, has a 7% graduation rate. Okay? So I don't want to, I'm not talking bad about them. That's just their reality. Because they're picking up students and adults who are illiterate. So they then have we have to find a way to deal with the issue of literacy that goes beyond the silos. We have a high school, we have a K-12 silo, you have a GED silo, you have the Job Corps silo, you have, I've been at this for a long time, but when I, through my career link, talk to employers, they don't even want to have the conversation anymore. They just don't. I have a helicopter company who has said to me, we got a major helicopter company come in a mile and a half from the Latino community. So I'm like, great, finally, high-tech jobs. Actually, they're low-tech jobs. I can't find a training program because the one-stop programming that I have to apply and win this contract for says that they have to sign a document that guarantees jobs. No employer wants to sign a document that guarantees jobs until they see who they're going to hire. So I need a change in the one-stop rules because no employer is going to play that game. That's their livelihood. And so no one, you know, I'm sitting here a little frustrated. There's some legitimate things we can do quickly with the monies that we have that make it easy for me to go to a guy who's bringing in people from Russia to build helicopters in the United States of America. And it's an Italian company, which is, I don't know whether they're committed or not. I think they're cheaper from Russia, I don't know. But he brings them from so he's bringing people from Russia to build computers and North Philadelphia. So, and he wants to work with me. So those are concerns that I have in the area of how do we begin to look at this. I know we're trying to create jobs real quick. The other one I'll say is we have a housing crisis in this country. I spoke to the Secretary of Housing this morning, and I said to him, we could create thousands of jobs, thousands, at $40,000 to $45,000 a year, with including the benefits, because in all these depressed neighborhoods, thousands of people are losing their homes. And according to the HUD guidelines, which he already knows about because I told him about it, you cannot create the HUD guidelines do not allow the creation of new mortgage counseling agencies with HUD money. So those of us, I'm an intermediary, a national intermediary. I can't create new agencies in the states of Arizona, Colorado. So he's looking into it because he could sort of say, you're kidding me, right? No, that's the rules. So there are ways to create, and to me, the HUD jobs, the HUD creation of these jobs, we create thousands of people who learn finance at the lowest level, which is helping people to save their homes. And as the market and the economy comes back, the private sector will suck these people out. It will, because they always have taken my mortgage counselors. So not anymore, because there's no market.
Right.
But as the market develops, a lot of these folks come back. So HUD could create thousands of jobs quickly without using the money it already has. It's not even a new appropriation.
Okay, and that's helpful. I mean, Hilda, Secretary Duncan, and I are all working together as we develop the workforce training program. You know, Penny was talking about that, and the work PRAB is doing in connection with that, so that's very, very helpful. Why don't we go to Ashley?
We can do that one, and then that'll be the other.
We have to end there. Okay, I apologize.
I'm Ashley Swearinger, I'm mayor of the city of Fresno in California, and I just want to chime in and support on a couple of themes that I've heard, and then also make a few suggestions on some immediate and specific items that would be helpful, certainly to a city like Fresno and the people that are in our community. Our unemployment rate right now is about 14.8%, and 15.8% in the county. About 30 minutes drive from Fresno, there are communities with literally 40% unemployment. largely due to mass layoffs in agriculture because of the shortage of water, and that's another conversation I had with Secretary Zalaba earlier today, and I won't bring that in here, but I just want to chime in total support of the comment from the lady from AFT in terms of reaching parents through the school system. That is absolutely critical, and we see that in Fresno all the time. A lot of the outreach that we do is through parents and guardians when they show up for school-based programs. And there's a big battle always over, do you focus on the kids or the parents? And as I always remind the educators of the kids, the best way to help that kid get through school is to stabilize his or her home life and to reach the parents. So that's a terrific concept, and would see it working in Fresno. Also want to chime in on the comment about governments falling off the cliff. That's totally true. You know, we're cutting now to the point of about 20% overall of our general fund. And our general fund wasn't big in the first place. I do, though, want to say if you're a city or an actual local government entity, there's no way you want those dollars getting bottled up at the state. I appreciate there are specific programs that states deliver, and those dollars clearly go there. But it's for sure, if you're a city in California, God forbid maybe that money go to the state. So as much of those dollars can be directed to the local level. We have 881 shovel-ready projects right now, public works and others that could be, great economic stimulus. And we've seen a fraction of the dollars come to the local level. So that's, I want to support that. Some specific WIA things, expanding the income test for Title I dollars might be a good idea for the immediate term. For us, apparently the layoffs in the agricultural industries are no longer included in the federal calculations for mass layoffs. That was a change the Bush administration made. Terrible impact to the region that I'm from, and should be reconsidered. The summer youth program was a terrific success in Fresno. We saw 2,561 youth get jobs, great success stories, terrific cooperation from the private sector. My understanding is that program, if it's not included in this next iteration of legislation, would potentially go away forever. And we know that in 2010, the majority of, or a big chunk of workers are going to be younger, and I'd hate to see the summer youth program go away. And then finally, we're an empowerment zone community. We understand there's an extension of that program through 2010, should be extended even further. There's problems about proving the value of those programs. We literally need the IRS to simply make aggregate data available so we can track which employers are taking advantage of it and prove the efficacy of the program or not. But we need cooperation from the IRS, and that's a data share issue. We're a round 3 community, which means we got no funding for implementation. Round 1, $100 million each per empowerment zone, and others of us got the designation without funding. So I think any type of partnership between workforce development dollars and empowerment zone programs would be a huge benefit as well.
Could I just draw your attention through the Department of Energy, the weatherization programs, there's going to, a lot of money is going to be going out, about $5 billion. There are several states that aren't participating. California is one. So what would, I would urge you to maybe contact
We were extremely
the governor.
about the top dollars, and that, got that resolved. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that, but happy to help.
Okay.
Can you turn in any written materials we brought, proposals, thoughts, ideas?
Exactly what I was getting ready to say. And I'm sorry, certainly, that we didn't get to everyone. But I think our doors and phone lines are always open.
Yes.
If you do have written materials, please share those with us. Yeah. I'm sorry, I just couldn't hear you.
What email can you send?
Sure. You can send that to send it to L Dunn, and that way we can send it over to you at who@who.gov. For this session, and then we can also get it to the secretary. Right.
Did you say EOP?
Yeah.
And I have 2 staff people I'd like to introduce, Dr. Ed Montgomery, and introduce your title and your assistance.
Yeah, I'm Ed Montgomery. I'm the director for Burglary for Auto Communities and Work.
So if any folks need help on regional issues like that with automobile industry related and others, and Alex Moss, who is my economist, he's also available. You need information, we can be helpful.
No, sorry.
I appreciate everyone coming.